I'd like to call this meeting of the Maple Run Unified School District Board of Directors to order at 6:08 p.m. Today is Wednesday, January 20th, 2021, and we are meeting electronically. We have 8 board members present representing 7.5 votes. First item is the agenda review. I do not have any changes. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Al.
Second.
Thank you, Jack. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it, 7.5 to 0. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, welcome everybody. Sorry that we're getting off to a little bit of a late start. We are now on to the visitor section. Do we have any visitors here who wish to address the board tonight? Anybody see anybody? Jason?
Ryer just put his name in the chat.
Okay, Ryer?
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to, I have a couple things I wanted to talk about quickly. I wanted to express a little bit of concern regarding the SRO committee, which had their first meeting last night. I'm first of all a little concerned with the idea that it was initially set up to have people of open minds on it. And I see former law enforcement officers, former DARE law enforcement officer on that committee. I see people who are very clearly in support of SROs. And I don't see any, I see people who are middle of the road, but I don't see anyone who was actively or very vocally against SROs. That's concerning because it wasn't the initial concept of what that group was supposed to be. I didn't apply for it because I thought you only wanted people who were middle of the road. And so that was disappointing. I also heard them talk about throwing out data, which for a group that was founded to only focus on data, throwing out data because they didn't feel like it pertained to Vermont, even though it was Vermont data, was concerning to me. And I think that's a real big issue. I also wanted to address the fact that with the insurrection at the Capitol last week, which was a horrible event, what kind of vetting has gone into the SROs in our school. We asked the city what kind of vetting happened for the police officers, if there was any connection between the police officers currently on the St. Albans Police Force and the and right-wing fringe groups. Their answer was not that we're aware of, which isn't a great answer. You're putting armed people into our classrooms and into our schools with my kids, and you can't tell me if the person isn't connected to white supremacist groups. And I can tell you based on social media, there is some not great things that I can see from social media with some of the SROs. That is scary to me, and it's not acceptable and should be addressed immediately. And I also wanted to really ask, with MLK Day happening this week, I really want to stress the idea of alternative learning resources and the idea that all history isn't necessarily in our history books. And I'd like to really push the board to look into ways in which we can study history that isn't in our history books. So Indigenous Americans, Black Americans, a bigger stress on that as it pertains to history and literature. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryer. Angie.
Hi there. I think what I had to say echoes what Ryer was saying. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. My 2 questions are, is this process of studying the SRO issue at Maple Run on track to better inform this board on issues of student equity related to police? Sorry, is the assembled committee with its stated charge able to address the original concerns that warranted the assembly of the committee in the first place? The charge and the composition seem a little misaligned to me from the original questions that brought up the need. So I just wonder if anybody has any reflections on that, whether right now or could be done over email.
Thank you. I do not see anybody else in the chat. Does anybody else?
Yes.
Who's
May I
that?
ask a clarifying question? It's
Oh,
Joanna.
Hi.
Hi. Angela, can you restate, you said that you don't feel as though the questions being asked of the study committee is in alignment with what again, please?
In alignment with the original concerns that community members brought forward about the SRO issue, I heard people asking, is this appropriate at all? Do we really need this? Is it solving the problems that we have? Why did this come about? Does research support continuing it? And the way the questions are formed right now and the charge, it seems like we're skipping over the big question, is this appropriate? And going right into lots of details about how to make it better. Does that help?
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Any other members of the public?
Can I say something or ask a question?
It's really not what this part is for. It's to hear from the public.
Okay, all right. Okay,
Okay. Let's move on to item 5, the consent agenda, which contains the minutes from January 6th, January 11th, ESP negotiations planning, and January 13th special meeting, and information about a grant. Does anybody have any one of these items that they want to have removed from the consent agenda for discussion? If I don't hear any objections, the consent agenda will be adopted. Any objections? Hearing none, the consent agenda is adopted. Item 6A, old business, COVID update. Kevin.
Good evening, everybody. I know you love having me talk for 10, 15 minutes on the subject every 2 weeks, but I have to say, I don't have a lot for today relative to a COVID update. Things are going as smoothly as can be expected right now. We continue to have a couple cases here and there. As we expected, we continue to have times where we're having to close down a class for 2 weeks and then open it back up. For instance, the class that I told you about 2 weeks ago at City will be opening back up on Thursday. But we now have a case at SATAC, and through contact tracing, we're seeing that we have to close a community for 2 weeks. So these things will continue going back and forth like that. Things are working quite well with this. The people in the schools and the Department of Health have it, and we're feeling pretty confident that things are continuing to go well. We don't have a lot of updates from the governor. There's talk from the governor about opening schools in April. We don't know much about what he means by that. So I'm just going to wait and see. I would say that unless he changed the guidance, the health guidance, that's probably going to be a difficult thing to do. But there's a few months there before something might happen. Otherwise, not much news. Sports has gone to what we call phase 2. So there's a little bit more going on with sports, but then still not able to have games. They can work amongst themselves, practice, scrimmage, and it's as far as they can go at this point. I believe that's it.
And our next testing period for staff, what are we, the first week of the month?
It's typically the first week of the month, and thanks, Jeff, I missed that, because we did have our second testing right around when the board met last time, and that testing did come back. I believe there was just under 300 people who got tested, all came back negative. So the next one will be early February.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have any questions for Kevin? Thank you, Kevin. Okay, the next item is 6B, Superintendent Search Update. We will be moving that into executive session under 1 VSA 313A3, the appointment or employment of a public officer or employee. Item 6C, FY22 budget. Martha, it looks like not much has changed since our last meeting.
Correct. So there were no changes made to the expenditure side of the budget nor the revenue side of the budget. The only changes that actually were made since the last board meeting, if you flip to page 3, I've kind of got them listed there. We received the second round of the preliminary equalized pupil count, which means it's still not final, but our count went down by, I think, four-ish more equalized pupils, which when you have a lower amount of students to divide your cost by, your spending per equalized pupil has gone up slightly. The last report, it was at $17,053. We're now at $17,086 per equalized pupil, which represents a 3.56% increase over the prior year. We also received our FY20 preliminary high school and vocational tuition allowable rates, which is, like I said previously, I use those to determine what to set our rates for FY22, which we've already done. We came within $47 on the high school tuition rate, which I don't know how we do it, but it comes in really close. So we won't have to do anything with that. The Northwest Tech Center tuition rate actually came in lower than what we charged. So we will have to do a refund to some sending districts to about $18,000 worth. And the bulk of that reasoning is because of the sudden closure of the school in March. There were some expenditures that we most likely would have incurred had we gone through the rest of the school year. I received the FY22 announced tuition rates from the various tech centers that we have to pay tuition to, and based on what I had projected and what they actually came in, there was little to no adjustments needed, so I didn't make any adjustments for that at this point. And so we made no adjustments to the expenditure or revenue budget at this time. So pages 4, 5, 6, nothing has changed on those pages. Page 7, which is the tax rate calculation sheet, with the slight decrease on our equalized pupil count. It did increase the tax rate slightly from what we had indicated at the prior meeting, which was after the merger incentive at the last meeting, it was estimated to be at $1.5644. Now we're at $1.5675. So about 1/3 of a cent difference there. The other next page, page 8, is just the actual template that the state usually sends us, and we just barely received it, so I thought I would include it, which basically has the exact same information as my tax rate spreadsheet, but I just wanted to make sure that everything matched up the way I've been presenting it, and it actually did. And then I believe I had one more attachment, which was the 3 prior year comparison report. This is the report that actually has to get printed in the annual report. And again, this just follows that same process where it goes through from the expenditures through the revenues divided by your equalized pupil to come up with your tax rate information. And again, this goes right in line with the information that I've been presenting right along. So unless there's any questions, there really was no change from the last board meeting,
Except
except for the cube.
the equalized pupil change of like 4 or 5, and that
Yes.
still isn't final, correct?
That's correct.
And I just wanted to make sure that everybody was clear on equalized pupil is not the same as ADM or, you know, the number of students that we have in the district.
Right. And from the information from the state, we don't anticipate that that number will change, if at all, from the number that I just used in this report. If
Okay.
it does, it will be very, very slight.
Um,
I don't know, Martha, I don't know if you have this information, probably not, but I'm wondering what the rate this year is like compared to last year.
The tax rate? Is that what you said? I'm sorry, you
Yeah,
broke
like
up.
the tax rate on that last. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
We
okay.
have poopy internet up here, as
it does
I hear.
show you the change, Sue, on that last page where it
Yeah.
shows the tax rates by town. It does tell you what the difference is.
Okay, all right. I'll look at that again.
Yeah, look on page 7.
Thanks.
I have it clearly
Okay,
indicated there.
And as we talked about last time,
all right,
it's
I was looking at
really-
page 8. All right, thank you very much.
the majority of it is from CLA. Well,
Correct.
it's just base changes in the yield
Mhm.
as well.
Right.
Thank you, Martha.
You're welcome.
I think we were in agreement last time that we were okay with this budget amount and the increase of, what is it, 2.29% on the
Correct.
expense budget. With that ends up being, as we see today, a 3.56% increase in per pupil spending. If that's the case, could I get a motion to approve this budget in the amount of, I assume you want the amount, Martha?
Right.
In the amount of $61,861,212 for FY '22.
So moved.
Thank you, Al.
Second.
Thank you, Nilda. And now we can have some discussion. As I said last time, I feel like this is a responsible budget. That 2.3% increase is not much over inflation. So I think you've done a good job. Anybody else have any other discussion points?
I think the point that you made about, it was going to be a year with a pretty substantial increase, no matter what, just because of the factors that, we have no control over. To see the 356, I think that may come off as a big number, but it's only slightly bigger, than it absolutely had to be. So,
Right. And Grant,
I think we'll need to keep that in the front of people's minds, I think.
and what I've heard from Ken is that everybody in the state is experiencing this CLA jump. And I'm not sure technically what it is that's causing that, but it is consistent across the entire state.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff, for saying that. I was just going to ask that. Is there any, can we find out what's causing the CLA jump, or does the state know, or?
Yeah, probably. I mean, shoot, what's that guy's name? Anyway,
Maybe
Nina, we might be able to ask somebody some questions.
Because it's just curiosity, but like Grant said, I think we've done the best. I think it looks good for the situations we're all going through right now. So I'm okay with it, but I'd like to get some more information on the CLA when it's available, why it's changed so much.
You know who I'm talking about, Martha? That guy in the budget office?
You're thinking of Brad.
Yes.
Brad James, but I don't think he would be the one to
No.
explain why the change in the CLA. I mean, he probably could, but it's not his office that does the work on the common level of appraisal accounting. That's more in, help me out here, Bill. What's the office that does the common level of appraisal?
It's coming from the tax department.
Tax department. There you go.
And so it's based on home values. I can give you a little bit from what I've heard, Jeff, is just the selling of real estate since the pandemic in Vermont. And that's what's changed a lot of the CLA.
Yeah, that's what I was afraid of. Okay.
I think it's,
Saying that everybody's house values have gone up, but they haven't been reassessed.
Reappraised, correct.
There is a movement out there this evening to go to the legislature, and I don't know how far it will go. Because this is so bad throughout the state with tax increases, of saying that this part of the funding is unfair because it moves so fast every year that you can't keep sometimes you can't keep a stable tax rate. And we've seen that, especially with town going from $1 for 101% to, what was it, 94?
95.
95?
95.
That's huge.
Yeah, they've been over 100 for a long time.
Yeah.
I think
Go ahead, Sue.
I'm going to say, as a board member, I like to think that our first responsibility is to the students, but it's also to the community. And so I think that I need to be able to really clearly explain, some of this jump. And I look at last year in Fairfield, the estimated impact was $62, and it looks like this year it's $161. That's a huge change for people, especially if you're not engaged in the community or care about the school or what's happening with kids.
Yep. Al, did you have something?
I was just going to say, I think that Martha did a outstanding job as she does every year, keeping us in a reasonable area with everything that we had to go through this year and we're going to go through next year. The anticipation is always there, and she always seems to come up with the right numbers. Thank you, Martha.
Yeah, and I'll get to you in 1 second, Grant. We still don't know what the legislature is going to do. And unfortunately, we're going to approve a warning tonight that's going to have certain language on it that we're not going to be able to change. And it may just be that, there'll be some last minute trying to get the word out if the legislature does something which improves the situation, which I'm hoping they will.
Right.
Grant. Oh, Martha, go ahead.
I was just going to say, typically, the one that would probably make the biggest movement is going to be the what's the word I'm trying to think of? The yield. There we go. And they won't act on that until the AOE gives the legislature the information from all of the past budgets. So that's always the kicker. Everybody has to pass their budgets so that the legislature can figure out what they have to do with that yield. So, and that's the one that will actually probably move the tax rate the most, is the yield. And so we don't usually know that until like mid-June.
Grant.
But I just wanted to follow up on something that Susan pointed out, and maybe Kevin mentioned also, is that in the face of jumps from the state and wherever else, I think we've implicitly at least decided not to make cuts, or at least major cuts. And once you decide that, everything else is just sort of nickel dime fluctuation. And I think that that's what needs to be made clear to the folks that are going to be approving this. I had one question: will there be a separate opportunity to discuss what exactly is warned and the language on the ballot, or is that set?
Well, we're going to talk about that next, but there is
Yeah.
pretty much
It was
most
just a
of the language-
question.
Most of it is by statute.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, you can mess with some slight things, but
Yeah.
Okay.
Article
Thanks.
6 is pretty clear. You have to
Yep.
say it this way.
I thought it might be
That'd
just,
be
a
thing.
new guy question. So thank you.
okay, anybody else? Are we ready to vote on this?
I would just want to add, Jeff, given some information that we're hearing this week, which is a little bit more positive about revenues with the state, you never know, but it does appear like, when they do the yield, they always do worst case scenario.
Right.
And it would lead me to believe that even though it's going to be too late for the budget, that
Right.
the yield will change.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem with the system, but I did see that as well, that they believe that the stimulus money is going to increase tax revenues substantially, which will put the state in a much better position. So, okay, if we're set, there's a motion on the floor and a second to approve a budget for FY22 in the amount of $61,861,212. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, 8-0.
Thank you.
And Stacy, I look out there and I'm trying to find votes and all I can see is Raider. So distracting. All right, item 6D, the warning. Martha?
Yeah, so we did include in your packet a blank one, but we also included one with the numbers filled in based on the information from the last board meeting that you were going to be possibly adopting the budget tonight at the amount that we presented last time. And I did update the information as far as the per pupil spending and the percentage based on the information presented at tonight's meeting. But to Grant's question, yes, pretty much everything on this ballot is directed by statute, how it has to be worded, and especially the article about the budget. Word for word, that's what they say we have to put in there, pretty much. So I don't know if you wanted to go through every article and
we went through them last time, so I think I would just like I could read Article 6, which is, shall the legal voters of the Maple Run Unified School District number 57 authorize the Board of Directors to expend $61,861,212, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2021. It is estimated that this proposed budget, if approved, will result in education spending of $17,086 per equalized pupil. This projected spending per equalized pupil is 3.56% higher than spending for the current year.
And can I make a suggestion regarding the motion?
Yes. Yeah. So I wanted to ask you, normally we all have to sign this.
Right.
Or at least the majority does.
Right. So, I'm sorry.
Al said a quorum has to sign it. Yeah.
I think I already anticipated what you're going to say, Martha.
Yes. So the administration is looking for a motion that would read, administration seeks a motion to approve the warning, acknowledging that passage of this motion will act as an individual board member authorization of their signature on this warning. And then, yeah, there we go.
Thank you, Al. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jack. Any further discussion about this? Okay, thank you, everybody. Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it, 8-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. Thank you, everybody, for your work on the budget. It's very appreciated. Item 7A, new business, set high school choice numbers. Kevin, do you want to start?
Sure. So I apologize because those of you who are vets on this committee hear this spiel every year, but we do have new people on the board, so I want to make sure it's understood. There is a law the state has, which is Act 129. Hold on one second, I'm letting somebody in. Act 129, which is a school choice law, which states that schools have to have some flexibility and allowance for some students to be able to, from towns, from non-choice towns, to be able to move into the school of their choice. And it's done through a lottery system, and it's done through where each school has to have a quota for the number of students it will allow coming in to their school from other districts, and the number of students they allow going out to other districts. Now, the interesting and somewhat curious part of the law is that the money does not follow the student, as happens with tuition students or whatever. So for the students who are allowed into our school, the money actually stays with the district that they're a resident of. And in addition, the students who leave our school and prefer to go somewhere else for whatever reason, the money stays with us. So it just doesn't, it does not follow the student. We have presently a quota that says we allow 28 students to come in to our school district. And if there are more than 28 who want to come in, then there has to be a lottery system. And we take the 28, we take 28 of them through a lottery system. And we have a quota of 40 that we allow to leave, should they wish. Every year, which I think is a credit to BFA, every year we max out on the quota coming in. This year was 28, and we had more than 28 who wanted to come in, and we had to go through a lottery. And we have 12 students who, for whatever reason, are going to a different school. So, every year we have to, the board has to decide on a quota for the next year. So the question now is, what we want to do? Do we want to stick? Everybody, every year we've stuck to the 40 because we just don't use it for going out. But it's always a question about allowing students in.
So Kevin, I remember last year or the year before that we increased the number because we had some issues with families who were having, siblings move up into the freshman class. You said we had more than 28 last year, and I'm just wondering if it was situations like that and we didn't allow some people, and what's the situation? What do we expect coming up?
Well, I'll start, and I don't know if Brett has any other information that he's learned this year, but historically we have more coming in than we can take. We do give preference if there's siblings coming in, and we've been able to handle that with the 28. So the question is, do we stick to 28 with the prediction, we can't say for sure, but the prediction that there may be more than 28 who would like to come to BFA, or do we choose to raise it at all? And I can't predict from year to year Brett, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I don't know if you've heard anything, if you've already seen where there are people who want to come in or anything like that.
Your statement's accurate. We have more that desire to come in than we're allowed. And we did have a couple educational continuance with students that want to spend their senior year here, but it might be else outside our community. So yeah, the 28 is going to be easy to fill.
Okay,
I've got a question. I've got a question. So once the students are in, then they don't have to re-go through the lottery for their following year if they're already in the school and they count as part of that 28?
Yes.
Okay. And I guess it was my understanding, based on questions that I had asked last year and the year before, that we don't, I'm going to say, lose any money. But if we have 28 coming in, I guess that makes sense. If we've got, well, no. Are we
So-
going to lose money on this?
we don't lose money. They don't count as part of our student population. But we would only lose money if we had so many students that we had to, say, hire more staff. You know, then we would have more expense
Okay.
because of them, but no new revenue.
So we're on a pretty comfortable number with the 28, because if you divide that between 4 classes, it's not that large, and we don't have, you know, where you start getting into problems, which I would recommend we never try to do, is if we bring so many in that we have to add staff. Because then it becomes an issue because we're not being paid for that. But generally what happens now is enough so we're able to absorb it. And we have a diversity of a group of kids who come in who really would like to be with us. And it's worked nicely.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Steve.
Good, Kevin. Just curious, you mentioned we've had a lottery the past number of years. Is the number beyond 28 a considerable number, or is it just 1 or 2? Or
I'm not going to be precise on this, Steve, but it's never huge. But I think last year we had around 32. Bill, you were nodding your head.
Bill's nodding his head.
Yeah, it was 31, 32 last year.
And I would be comfortable with raising it to 32. I don't know what other board members think.
does that number put us in the category of having to get more staff, or what number would represent having to get more staff?
Well, it would only be 4 more students, again, spread across 4 years. So
That's like a student a class.
yeah, you know.
So
I think it's a good question. What is that number? Is it 50? Is it 100? I mean, my guess is 100 would mean more staff, but
I would say when we start getting around 40, because that's 10 kids, you know, they don't always even out, but it's technically 10 kids, and that could be a class.
Yeah, I think it also, Kevin, would depend on how fast you increase the numbers, because they're going to be spread out across the years if you increase it slowly. Whereas if you just increased it 20 right now, then maybe you'd get, you know, a lot of freshmen that would overload you.
Brett, did you have a question or statement?
No, I was just going to add the comment you just said, but if you were in a very odd manner to have 70 requests from a senior class or a freshman class, that can throw your numbers off. So it's not necessarily just the total number. It might be the number that wish to enter freshmen, because it's not simply reallocating staff to fill that need. It's not quite as simple as that.
Right.
So in my view, it's not just a simple number equation.
What I would say is what we're seeing historically, we're comfortable right now.
Yeah, Brett, I'm assuming you would be fine if we raised it to 32.
Yeah, I happen to like more students coming in. So that's fine with me, understanding you always have to take a look at, is it overwhelming staff? And I wouldn't have the data on that exactly right now, but I would support that.
Al, did you have a comment?
No, I think the 32 would be ideal
Okay.
to there.
Grant?
You're gonna go
Yeah.
across.
I mean, we've been approaching this from the perspective of inching up, I feel like. But just ask the question, what's the right number? What is it to right size this? Is it 32? Is it 40? And maybe that's a question for Brett and Kevin.
Well, as I said, probably when we start getting out around 40, if we were to get around 40, then we should start reconsidering that might be too high.
I'm sorry, Kevin.
No, go ahead, Brett.
Well, like educationally, philosophically, having more students, I would reluctantly proceed cautiously with this. I would not do a big jump 1 year at all. I would proceed cautiously as we look towards answering specifically the questions people are asking.
So inching up is the right approach, it sounds like. Okay.
When I first got here, we were at 25. So it has been inching up.
I think it's good to be desirable, that's for sure. And it can help you too, in the reverse, when you have classes that maybe are under utilized by students, you could get more students than in those classes and preserve them.
So are you looking for a motion, Jeff?
I would look for a motion, Mr. Corey, to set the high school choice numbers at 40 students allowed to go out and 32 to come in, if that's acceptable to you.
So moved.
Thank you, Al.
Second.
Thank you, Jack. Any further discussion? Everybody good? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
What was the, I have a question,
Nilda.
Jeff, what was the number, what's the current number going out
40,
before today?
40,
So we would only change the 28 to 32.
right. And as
Okay.
Kevin said, right now we only have 12 students taking advantage of
Right.
that and leaving.
Right. Okay, just wanted to get my number straight. Thank you.
Yep. All those opposed? Ayes have it, 8-0. Thank you. Item 8A, warrants.
I move the warrants be approved as presented and that the approval of the authorization of the minute warrants would act as signatures for the blah, 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 blah. And you all know.
Thank you, Al. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it, 8-0. That brings us to item 8B, superintendent report.
I have nothing, Jeff, other than the fact that I noticed our new editor of messages here today. So I just introduce him. You'll see him as Cameron Buckett. So Cameron, thanks for coming. It's nice to see a reporter at our board meetings. We welcome you and good luck on what will be a challenge.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Thank you, Cameron. Sorry we kicked you out of the first meeting.
That's quite all right. I understand.
All right, thank you, Kevin. Item 8C, board announcements.
We finally got some snow.
Yes. Oh, and that was one of the things that was announced on Tuesday, I think, that skiing and snowboarding could perhaps have some small competitions because it's outdoors. So
Yeah, I know they're starting some of the the women's FIS races at the collegiate level this week at the mountain, but I finally get to take out my 13 little kids at the mountain, so that's good.
good. Anybody else? Agenda items for future meetings.
I have a question, Jeff. We have public comment at the beginning of these meetings, and a lot of the time it seems like the public actually wants to engage in discussion. I understand that's not what that time's for. How do we progress that conversation? Does that become a future agenda item? I don't even know if this is the right place to ask that question.
Yeah, no, and that is generally what it would be, is it would become a future agenda item if we chose. And as I think you've seen, when we get to agenda items where we are discussing something where the public has an interest, we can engage them then.
Yes.
Because it's on the agenda. That initial stuff that comes up during the visitor section, it's just not fair to us or the administration to comment on something that we haven't thought about at all. So.
Okay.
And I would also say that in March, when you do the reorganization, that's also a time if you want to reorganize the agenda. So, you know, like some people might put public comment at the end, or they might even put 2 of them on. Different boards have done different things in terms of that.
Okay. So I'm not going to propose, unless maybe someone else will, I'm not going to propose that we add that to the next agenda. But I probably will consider, you know, how that can be added in the future.
I think, you know, we've formed a committee, and I think we need to give them some time to.
That's kind of where I'm at too, and that's why I was going to kick it down the road. But thanks,
Yeah.
Jeff.
Yeah, Steve.
Yeah, I realize we formed the committee. I'm just a little concerned about what might be perceived as a hiccup within our community regarding how things are progressing already. I know we look forward to the findings from that group. I don't know whether or not it still would be interesting to have a discussion, or at the very least have feedback from the chair of the committee or someone to give us some feedback that would allow us to, I don't know, just
like an update. Could we get an update?
Yeah, I mean,
maybe that's the word I'm looking for. Yeah.
We will at some point. That was part of it. I would encourage all of us to watch the recording when it comes out. I haven't seen it yet. I know that the meeting was only intended to be like an hour and a half. So I just don't want to react too quickly to somebody. They're just getting started. So.
And how soon is the next meeting? Do we know? I mean, I'm sure we know.
I do not know. I mean, you know, they're using Doodle to try to figure out when everybody can get together. So I haven't talked to anybody, so I don't know about last night's meeting yet. Joanna?
No, I'm agreeing. I'm agreeing with what you're saying, and I think that we should definitely. I heard the concerns tonight, and I want to be respectful, you know, of them. But I also want to be able to watch the recording before I give, further feedback.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I hope that we're all going to do that and try to stay as informed as possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do think that from the conversations that I've had with the facilitator, you know, emails, she seems very good. So I think she's going to work hard to get good results.
Absolutely.
Where do we find the recording?
On YouTube.
Where will it be posted?
On YouTube, if you search for Northwest Access TV,
okay,
you can find their channel, and they have all, you know, they have our meetings. They'll have these.
Jeff?
Yeah.
Would it be possible to ask Brenda to put the links of the recordings onto the MRUSD's website, just for easy access for the public to be able to review them as well?
Yeah, because if they're part of our Maple Run channel, then they'll be there anyway, because I believe we already have a global link to that. But I'll find it when it gets put out there, and I'll make sure I send everybody on the board the link to that first one.
Thank you, Jeff.
Okay, so now we're going into executive session for the superintendent search under 1 VSA 313A3, the appointment or employment of a employee. Can I get a motion for that?
So moved.
Thank you, Al.
Second.
Thank you, Joe. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes 8-0. And the executive session is to just include the board. Thank you, everybody.
Next.
All right, we are now out of executive session at 7:28 p.m. And I would look for a motion to offer the position as MRUSD Superintendent to Bill Kimball, starting July 1st, 2021, and authorize the board chair to negotiate a 3-year contract pending his acceptance.
So moved.
Thank you, Al.
Second.
Thank you, Jack. And any discussion? I would point out that the reason why we are offering him the position is based on the recommendation of the Superintendent Search Committee and our interviews and experience with Mr. Kimball. Everybody set?
Yes.
Sounds good.
All those
So
in-
one last question. Do you want to call him tonight, or will you allow me to call him?
Yeah, you can call him, Jack.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Very nice, Jeff.
Well, I was thinking I was going to do it, but Jack seems really excited, so.
He's really excited. That's
Yeah.
nice of you to do that for him.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, everybody. Seeing as how we are at the end of our agenda, we are now adjourned.